Hello, hello. Welcome back to another Transits and Tarot video. This one here is going to be covering June 9th, which is Monday. And so there is a lot going on this day. Two big reasons. There are about 13 planetary transits and just aspects that are formed throughout the day. So that's quite a bit happening. But also, it's a wonderful day because Jupiter is moving into Cancer on this day and will be in Cancer for the next little over a year. So, lots to cover today. Let's go ahead and get started. I do have my little moose spirit animal rock at the very top, hoping to let it hang out there for today's video. So, okay, just a quick note. All the times that I mention here are Pacific times, so please do keep that in mind and adjust accordingly to where you live. The first transit here that we'll have will be happening at 12:02 a.m. and that's going to be a quincunx. So I don't have a nice card that illustrates that, mostly because it's a minor aspect, but the general symbol for that is this here. And I do like to pull out the trine card and the opposition card because a quincunx is at 150 degrees, which falls right in between a trine and an opposition. As you saw from my little scribbled symbol there, a quincunx looks like a seesaw to me. So that's a good way for me to remember it. It's when two planets aren't quite seen eye to eye. So they might have moments where they're kind of pulled towards each other, and then they'll have moments where it's like, I don't want to see that, or I don't, they're struggling to see eye to eye. A bit of flip floppy kind of energy there. So again, 12:02 a.m. The quincunx will be happening between the moon in Sagittarius and Chiron in Aries. So let's pull those cards out. Here I have the High Priestess. She represents the moon, and then we have the Death card, which represents the zodiac sign of Scorpio. For Chiron, I have the Hierophant, mostly because Chiron is a wounded healer, and in that way, I like to connect it to the Hierophant because the Hierophant is like a spiritual guide that kind of helps people. So I think it kind of fits the idea there. And Chiron is in Aries, which is represented here by the Emperor. I'll pull out my little Chiron card here. So Chiron, hurt and heal. So it's our deepest wounds, and it's once we acknowledge these wounds, it's how we can help heal other people. And so it's been in Aries, yes, it's been in Aries now for quite a while. I believe it's been since sometime around 2019, and it'll be there until I believe 2026, 2027. So still a ways to go there. All right. And so these two planets will be again quincunxing, so they won't be seen quite eye to eye, and that's because of their positioning. So Aries isn't quite in opposition, but isn't trining Scorpio, and so there's this push and pull. We may have deep emotions about a past wound, but we're struggling to have awareness about that potentially. There could be some struggles to see our hurt or our faults or the way that our deep wounds are affecting us and the people around us. So that could be a bit of a struggle early on in the day, or something that might pop up in a dream. So something to keep in mind: the deep wounds connecting to our deep feelings, and just possibly some lack of awareness there. From there, we move on to the next aspect, which is happening at 3:48 a.m., and that's going to be a square between Mercury in Cancer and Saturn in Aries. So we'll keep the Aries card out. For Mercury here, we have the Magician. For Cancer, we have the Chariot. And this combination is represented by the Three of Cups, a lovely little card there. Here we have the Square. And here we have Aries. And so Saturn just recently entered Aries. I do have a little reading, special reading that I did for this planetary move. So if you're interested in that, please check that out. But let's see what we have here. So these two planets are going to be forming a square. That's going to be Mercury and Saturn because of where they're at, which is Aries and Cancer. These zodiac signs struggle a bit because they're both cardinal, so they're both starter energies, but they're very different types of elements. So we have fire here with Aries, and we have water here with Cancer. And so that can be a bit of a struggle. Sometimes, Aries and Cancer might not see, basically, they don't want to approach a situation in the same way. Whereas Cancer is emotional, nurturing, Aries is more tough and go getting. So, we may see a bit of squaring off of these two planets, bit of a challenge between the two. It could impact our social circles just because we have the Three of Cups here. So something to be aware of as we start to move into the early hours of the day at 3:48 a.m. From there, we move on into the next planetary aspect, which happens at 5:06 a.m., and that's going to be an opposition. This opposition is happening between the moon in Scorpio and Uranus in Taurus. So let's pull those cards out. So there we have the moon in Scorpio. There we have Taurus this time. And here we have Uranus. So this is an opposition. That means there's definitely a power struggle. The Fool wants to go on a fun adventure, but Scorpio here, our emotions might not be so ready for that. There might be some hesitation. Scorpio is a fixed sign, so deeply entrenched in what it's feeling and what it perceives. And so we do want, there is a bit of, I guess, middle ground that we can reach here between this idea of death and rebirth and the Fool starting a new journey. So it could be just a matter of figuring out what it is that we're ready to kind of end so that we can start a new beginning, and then tapping into that Fool energy so that we can then shoot off from there and start this new emotional adventure, or possibly in, some sort of resource area, because we have the Hierophant here, which is Taurus and wealth, or material things, because it's an earth sign. So something to be aware of, a little bit of tension between the material and the emotional aspects of our life. But there is room there for some compromise. So this will be happening around 5:06 a.m. So very early hours there of the morning. Maybe some people are starting to wake up around that time. So something to keep in mind. Maybe money's on your mind. You might have some financial concerns. And you might just need to figure out, okay, maybe it's a no spend day, or what things can we, trim a little bit. I know there are a lot of financial concerns and just thoughts around money in general during this time. So just something to think about. Ending possibly old habits and new habits that we can start to develop around this. So just some food for thought. Again, this happens at 5:06 a.m. From there, we move into another quincunx. We keep the moon in Scorpio. Here we have the trine and the opposition cards. And there we have Jupiter and Gemini, which is represented by the Eight of Swords card. So again, this is a quincunx, a push, a pull, a little bit of I see you, I don't see you, not quite seeing eye to eye between these two planets here, Jupiter and the moon. With Jupiter being in Gemini, we're kind of dealing with changing times, changing circumstances. Sometimes we're on top, sometimes we're not. And when we're caught, in that type of situation, Gemini shows us that we have to make choices. Sometimes it's tough choices, but usually we want to follow our heart, listen to our intuition, tap into that internal feeling to decide which way to go. And so Gemini is an air sign, which connects to thoughts and the mind. And so that's why here we have the Eight of Swords when things are changing quickly around us and we have to face and make choices. Sometimes we can get caught in our own thought process there and get tied up in that. And so that's what the Eight of Swords is showing us here. And it's just a bit of warning or something to keep in mind. Make sure that you're not overthinking things and getting tied up in those thoughts that may not be very fruitful. Just go with your gut to follow the best course of action. So there we have that. Again, our feelings might be struggling to help us find the way. So balance your thoughts and your feelings and use them both to try and find the way forward. This aspect will be happening at 7:48 a.m. So just a few things to keep in mind there as you start your day and get things going, okay? From here, things are going to change because the moon is changing zodiac signs. So this is at 7:56 a.m. The moon will be entering Sagittarius, and this will give us a new feeling in the air, let's say. So let's pull those cards out. Here we have the High Priestess for the moon. And here we have Temperance, which represents Sagittarius. And so this position is represented by the Nine of Wands. So the moon moving into Sagittarius shows us that it's a good time to kind of take stock. The Nine of Wands is a card about rest, recovery, taking stock in a situation. You are prepared for what may come your way, so you're still guarded, but you're setting some little boundaries there. Where it's like, okay, I need to rest and recover right now, and so you might just be in a place of like a little bit of a pause, taking stock in a situation, and trying to evaluate matters for where you want to go next. What's planning your next step, your next move. And so that's what the moon in Sagittarius is going to bring. Sagittarius is very expansive, very joyous and eager to kind of get things going, right? It's like a big ball of energy, Sagittarius. So optimistic and joyous. And so here with the moon being in this position, we want to again just kind of practice the temperance card and temper ourselves, temper our desires to move ahead and just take stock a little bit, right? Kind of bring the level down a bit so that then we can shift down so we can go faster, I suppose. If you drive a stick shift or a manual car, that might make sense a little bit. Okay, so again, this is happening at 7:56 a.m. From there, we go to the moon in Sagittarius trining Saturn in Aries. This is going to be happening at 9:56 a.m. So let me pull those other two cards. Here we have the trine. There we have Aries. And there we have Saturn. So the moon in Sagittarius trining Saturn in Aries. And so trine is a very harmonious aspect. It's the planets being in positions that really complement and work very well together. And that's, of course, because Sagittarius and Aries are both fire signs. So they're very action oriented and they speak the same language, these positions. And so the planets being there is going to be helpful. It's going to be helpful to our emotional life, and it's going to be helpful to just kind of figuring out what to trim because Saturn is a lot about boundaries. I like to think of that with this circle around her, right? It's about cutting things and really bringing things back down to the essentials. And so that works great with the Nine of Wands as well, as we're trying to calculate our next move, figure out what we need to do next. Saturn in Aries is going to be very helpful because it's going to take that initiative to say, okay, this is what I'm cutting today, and prioritizing basically. So that'll be wonderful around 9:56 a.m., which is great because it's the start of our day. If you work in an office, it's like, all right, let me figure things out. Let me kind of reset. Which emails do I need to tackle first? Or if you work from home or you're at home, a homemaker, what chores do I need to take care of first? That kind of thing, right? Getting your to-do list going and getting your priorities straight for the day. So wonderful thing to have here at 9:56 a.m. From here, we move on to the next planetary aspect, which is happening at 10:20 a.m. This time it's a square. So let me grab the cards for that. All right, there we have the square card. And this square is happening between Venus and Taurus and Pluto and Aquarius. So here we have, put it on this side, Venus. Here we have Taurus. So Venus and Taurus. And here we have Pluto in Aquarius. All right, so intense little energies here. Pluto in Aquarius. This just happened at the end of last year, 2024. And so it's been a new energy that we've been working with. But I really love what these cards here in particular show us. I love this Pluto card. Well, it's the Judgment card, but it represents Pluto. And I really, really enjoy that. It gives me hope. It helps me to see the positive sides of Pluto rather than just being wrapped up in the fear of Pluto, the death and destruction. This here shows me that Pluto works to pull the best in us, the truth in us, our essence is pulled up so that we can really enjoy, right? Be our authentic self and live our best life, especially paired here with Aquarius, beautiful energies there. We all have hopes, dreams, aspirations, right? Where she has her little rope on her star and it's like, oh man, those big dreams that we have. So Pluto here is really going to help us reach for our true and authentic wishes and desires, right? We're not going to spend, or we're going to trim that fat and not waste our time with things that don't really matter or aren't really aligned with who we are. Here instead, we'll really come down to who am I really and what really are my dreams and aspirations there. So this is forming a square, however, to Venus in Taurus, which here the Hierophant, right, represents those external guides. And that could be part of why we have a square here. External guides versus authentic self might be a bit of a struggle, right? Because when we look without, it's hard to really connect to our internal self, to connect within. So just kind of being aware of that. We can look outside for external validation, confirmation, support, etc. Right, with Venus, it's a very nurturing energy. Venus in Taurus is wonderful because Venus is at home. She just loves to be in Taurus, nurturing and taking care and providing and all of that wonderful stuff. But Pluto is a little bit of a tough cookie. Pluto's going to push to really pull the truth out. And so that's where the square will be happening. This nurturing, just loving, like, oh, beautiful little energy with like really getting down to the truth. So that's the square that we see there. But, it's all for our own good. Ideally, we can kind of work with these two energies. It's not impossible when we have a square. It's just going to be a matter of working through the challenges so that we can accomplish the goal. This aspect, again, is happening at 10:20 a.m. So still early in the morning, but just something to kind of be aware of for that time. All right, from here, we move into another quincunx. We do have 4 of those throughout the day. This is the third one. This one's happening at 11:08 a.m. Again, here we have the trine card and the opposition card. This quincunx is happening between the moon in Sagittarius and Mercury in Cancer. Here we have the moon in Sagittarius with the Nine of Wands there. And here we have Mercury in Cancer with the Three of Cups. All right, so again, not quite seeing eye to eye. We might be pulled towards social situations, but, trying to kind of keep our boundaries at the same time. So that's a bit of that not seeing eye to eye, where we have our personal emotional needs, things we need to um, take care of for ourselves, but there might be external pulls towards something different or kind of oppositional from what we're trying to achieve. So we might feel a bit obstructed around 11:08 a.m. So around lunchtime, right? It's closing in on that lunchtime. If you're at work, maybe it's coworkers trying to hang out for lunch. Maybe it's people sending you like last minute, urgent emails or tasks that you need to do. If you're at home, it might be just trying to balance, like wrapping things up. Oh, maybe you have to pick someone up or you need to get groceries. So it's just kind of balancing these things. Your emotional needs for rest and recovery with social, possibly not obligations, but little pulls from the outside. Here we have the Three of Cups, which is a very social card. Right, maybe getting a call from a family member, they just want to chit chat and you're trying to get things done at home, right? So that kind of energy. Remember with the quincunx there is a positive kind of element or part to that, but then there's also a little bit of a like, man, this is really getting in my way right now. So yep, around 11:08 a.m. All right, our next aspect here is happening at 11:55 a.m., and that's going to be a trine between the moon and Jupiter and Neptune in Aries. So here I have the trine card. We have Neptune in Aries. And then we have the moon in Sagittarius. And so these are vibing really well because Sagittarius and Aries, both air signs. So they want to collab. They speak the same language. They're fire signs. They're, working very nicely. With Neptune, again, we have like this energy of you're at the right place, just hang out like the hangman shows us here. Neptune linked to illusions, daydreams, things like that. Could be idealizing leadership as well. And so with the moon being in Sagittarius and we have the Nine of Wands here, it works well, right? It's about pausing, taking a moment. And so is the Nine of Wands. It's about rest and recovery, taking stock. So these work very nicely together. And then with Aries and Sagittarius, it's about, taking this time to evaluate and be strategic about our next move. And here we even have the little emperor being strategic with his little chess piece. So wonderful little energies here, a great little time right around lunchtime to kind of, get into your zone and really strategize what your plans are for possibly the rest of the week or the rest of your day. So yeah, great little moment there for us at 11:55. From here, we have our big moment with Jupiter entering Cancer. Yay! And there we have Cancer. And so this is wonderful because Jupiter switches signs about, once a year. It takes it about a year to go through a zodiac sign. Jupiter is a joyous, very generous kind of planet that we tend to think of bringing good fortune, luck, ease to whatever zodiac sign it moves into. And so it's been in Gemini, now moving to Cancer. Could be great for kind of revamping your home or taking care of yourself. So, very personal, cozy kind of vibes with Cancer there, okay? And so, something to be mindful of Jupiter is it's like it's like having privilege, right? Like Jupiter's like that privilege that comes into your life in sometimes subtle, sometimes not so subtle ways. And with privilege comes an ease, right? Life can be easy or things can come easily, but there's also I'll call it a shadow side to privilege where sometimes when things come easy, we don't appreciate them as much, or there's a struggle that comes with privilege as well. And so that's something to kind of think about is Jupiter starts to move into the Cancer sign, the sign of home and family, um, and things like that. So, what things might be wonderful and what things might be wonderful, but we might want to curb ourselves, right? Like, for instance, overeating. We may just be really into enjoying those meals with ourselves or with loved ones. And so that's where maybe, we have great opportunities for possibly making great food or eating at great restaurants, but we may want to be mindful of the consequences of that. So, just a little example of Jupiter just going into really any sign, but in this case, Cancer. It comes with great gifts and abundance and generosity, but we also want to be mindful, right, of what we take. Take what you need, not just taking for the sake of taking. So, all right, just that's happening at 2:02 p.m. Wonderful little switch there, a change of energy with Jupiter moving into a different sign, different house for you, most likely. So, all right, from here, we go into a sextile. So here's the little sextile card, and that's going to be between the moon in Sagittarius and Pluto in Aquarius. So there we have Pluto in Aquarius, and here we have the moon in Sagittarius. And so a sextile is a very dynamic kind of energy. These planets are not like super harmonious. There's, a give and take, but they work very well together. So again, very dynamic. Here Aquarius is an air sign and Sagittarius is a fire sign. So they work wonderful, right? Air stokes fire and helps it to expand. And so with this, we'll have an opportunity to really evaluate our situations. This is happening at 2:58 p.m. if I haven't mentioned it. But figuring out what's going to work best for us so that our needs are met in the best way, and I think that's wonderful. So there we have it, 2:58 p.m. Moon in Sagittarius sextiling Pluto in Jupiter, so working to really bring out the best in us so that we can achieve those goals that we're seeking. All right, and now we move into our final two aspects for the day. Next one is Moon in Sagittarius, quincunxing Venus in Pluto. Let's get our Venus and Taurus cards going. So here we have Venus, and there we have Taurus. So once again, we have that little bit of a struggle going between, yes, I like this, no, I don't. Getting it, not getting it. And so again, with Venus and Taurus, we have that very nurturing kind of energy, just loving and, abundance with like material wealth or resources. But then with the moon in Sagittarius, we're really trying to be strategic and figure out our next best move. So I think it's going to be a lot about not getting carried away with that Sagittarius energy, which tends to be expansive and just this big ball of energy, making sure that we're keep being mindful of our emotional needs so that we don't overextend ourselves. So, while we may want to help and assist other people, we also need to be mindful of, okay, where do we have our boundaries and, wrapping things up for ourselves. All right, at least this is our last quincunx, okay? From here, we move on to our final square, which we had about 3 of those as well today. But this final square is happening at 3:54 p.m., and that's going to be between Mercury in Cancer and Neptune in Aries. So let's bring those cards out. Here's the square. Here we have Mercury, Cancer, the 3 of Cups. We have Neptune in Aries. All right. And so once again, we have those cardinal energies, those go-getters, the self-starters, right? Emotions versus actions. So a bit of a competition there with this energy style. Neptune is all about you're in the right place at the right time, kind of just hanging out like the card here shows us, right? That's what the Hanged Man is all about. And Neptune's a lot about daydreaming, often connected to like illusions, things like that, but it can be like idealizing leadership as well. So if we're in this mindset of we're idealizing taking action and being a leader, that may be a bit at odds with our desire to nurture ourselves or our small communities, our loved ones, that kind of thing. So there may be a bit of a struggle there. Again, this is at 3:54 p.m., possibly a bit of tension between finishing up our workday, going home to our loved ones. Maybe you have to stretch your day out a little bit more to make sure you finish up the tasks, longer than you wanted, that kind of thing. So, something to keep in mind happening around 3:54 p.m. Not impossible energies with the square. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. We just need to be able to manage these situations so we can overcome the challenges and achieve the goal that we're seeking to achieve. Okay. All right, and so this is actually the final planetary aspect for the day. Not terrible. Again, a square. There is light at the end of the tunnel with it. Just being mindful of what things are pulling us in, conflicting areas there, but finding a way to kind of pull those together in the end. All right. Well, I really hope that you guys enjoyed hanging out with me today for this planetary transits and tarot video. I'll see you all again very soon for another one of these. Thank you. Bye.